when you don't lose your money, but your money loses its purchasing power. Meaning that when you go to the store to buy something, prices are running out of control because the government spending has destroyed the value of our money. And I want to make sure that I'm in Washington, because at this moment, there isn't a single United States senator that understands our problem, the nature of our problem, or how government policy is now actually making it worse. And I know that there are a lot of people who are running for office now as Republicans who are now claiming that they want to go to Washington and they want to shrink government and they want to cut government spending. The problem is, where have they been? I mean, we've been growing government under Democrat or Republican rule for years, and nothing changes. The problem is we continue to vote people into office who really care more about staying in office and getting reelected than about following through with those principles. So I'm coming out of my private sector job. I've never sought elected office. I've obviously never held elected office. I want to go to Washington for one reason. I want to do what every other Republican has failed to do. I actually want to bring those principles to Washington and shrink government. And I want to explain to the people who are there now what the gravity of the situation is, how dire these circumstances are. This isn't a game anymore. It's not about just getting reelected. The fate of our nation hangs in the balance. We can't continue to stimulate this economy, but when we're actually destroying it. So I have to get our leaders to understand that the nation is more important than their own political aspirations, and that we have to deliver the bad news to the public. And unfortunately, the bad news is that after years of reckless spending, we're broke. Right? We spent trillions of dollars we didn't have, buying stuff we couldn't afford and that we didn't make because of government policies that led to these mistakes. And we have to fess up to the reality. The only way out of this mess is to save our money and to produce more. That means Americans have to spend less, we have to buy fewer cars, we have to buy fewer houses, and that means Washington has to spend less. Everybody has to cut back so that we can save money, because we're not going to get any real economic growth until we have savings. We're not going to have jobs until we have capital, but we're not going to get capital until someone has savings to finance it. So all the while, if we continue to pursue these reckless policies, the country's going to keep getting worse. Every time the government passes another jobs bill, they're going to destroy more jobs. Because you don't create jobs by passing bills. You destroy jobs by passing bills. Jobs come from profit and they come from capital. And right now, we're destroying both. The only way we're going to get real productive employment is if the government gets out of the way. If the government can repeal all the regulations and all the taxes that are stifling job creation right now. But we can't do that unless we cut back on government spending. But we're not cutting back. Government spending is growing through the roof. This budget that Obama just proposed is $3.8 trillion in 1 year. In fact, I'm sure it's going to end up being $4 trillion by the time it's all said and done. That's twice what we were spending 10 years ago. How can we double the size of government in 10 years? How can we afford all that government? Most people are earning less than they were 10 years ago. How can government be consuming more? And in the meantime, in the current budget, $1.6 trillion is borrowed. The government is borrowing 60 cents for every dollar it collects in taxes. You can't run a country that way. We just increased the debt ceiling by $2 trillion, and that's just going to buy us one more year. How can we put $2 trillion onto the national debt in 1 year and expect that to continue? We are headed for a funding crisis. The Chinese, and the Japanese, and the Saudis who have been buying our debt, they're not going to do it anymore because we can't pay it back. The only buyer left is going to be Ben Bernanke. And when he starts buying that debt, when he starts printing all that money, if we think we got problems now, if we think the unemployed have problems, wait till we have runaway inflation and double-digit interest rates on top of all this unemployment. And the unemployment is not going to get better, it's only going to get worse because the government policy that we have in place now is preventing the economy from restructuring. They're trying to reflate the bubble. But we can't do that. We have to allow resources to be reallocated. We need to allow resources, including labor, to move away from services back to goods production. We have to produce things, we have to make things, we need more jobs in manufacturing, but we can't transition people from service sector or government jobs to manufacturing when the government is trying to divert resources into the banking sector by propping up Wall Street or trying to prop up inefficient automobile companies in Detroit. The government is trying to prop up the phony economy of the past, and when they do that, they prevent the real economy from being created, and they permanently create more and more unemployment. And as more and more resources are transferred to the government, when they get government jobs, Most government employees don't produce anything. They live off the productivity of the rest of us. But the more private sector jobs they destroy, the harder it is to support the government sector. And if you keep growing government at the expense of the private sector, eventually the whole thing collapses because you've got the pyramid upside down. You have to have a strong private sector to support a smaller public sector. But when that starts to reverse, the whole thing implodes, and that's where we are right now. And I know it's my 5 minutes are running up. So what my pledge to the people in this room or the people of the state of Connecticut is, if you actually elect me to the United States Senate, I'm going there for a reason. Right? I'm not going there to get reelected. I'm not even going to try to get reelected. I'm not going to spend any of my time trying to get on the right committees or meet the right people so I can raise money to get reelected. I don't think we have time. I think I got 6 years, and if I can't help solve these problems in 6 years, they're going to grow to such an enormous proportion that they're not going to be solvable. So I'm going to go there and actually do what everybody else just talks about doing. And it might just start off as me by myself against 99 other senators. But I think I have the background, I think I have the track record of understanding economics. I mean, right now, people in Washington are following these Pied Pipers of Doom, people like Ben Bernanke or Timothy Geithner, who have never gotten anything right in their entire careers. And I can document what they've said and how wrong they've been, and I can probably convince them to listen to somebody who's gotten it right, as opposed to people who have gotten it wrong. And try to get the other senators to understand that this is the time where they have to put their country above themselves. And I know that for a lot of people in this room who have voted Republican, and I've voted Republican in the past, and I voted Libertarian, and sometimes I haven't voted, because I get very frustrated, because we keep electing Republicans and they govern like Democrats the minute they get to Washington, because they like it there and they want to stay there. Well, I don't want to go there, but I feel I have to go there, and I'm going there for a reason. And I know a lot of times when you go into the voting booth and you get a Republican, you get a Democrat, you hold your nose and you vote for the Republican because he's not as bad as the Democrat. Well, what I'm going to give you is a chance to actually vote for somebody. If I have the nominee of this party, no one is going to be going to the polls to vote against the Democrat. They're going to be going to the polls to vote for me. And I think of all the people in this race, I think I have the best chance of actually winning it. And anyway, thanks everybody. And I've got over 17,000 people that have donated to my campaign. I got a lot of volunteers already, but I have a website, schiffforsenate.com, so make sure and check that out. And also spend some time on the internet. Don't take my word for the fact that I predicted all this stuff. Research it yourself. Go on Google, go on YouTube. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours of television shows and speeches that I've made and things that have been written about me. It's all there. I have a record of writing and forecasting that goes back for a decade, and it's all online. Thank you.